I mean, this is just some of the signage we've obtained. A barrage of Amazon's anti-union signs that they've put all over the warehouse. They stopped for a while. Now they're putting them back up conveniently after the workers have some momentum, after they've been awarded that they could hold an election. So we got this. I put it out this morning on our Twitter at Status Coup. Just sample signs. Ask how. The ALU, which is Amazon Labor Union, may make a lot of promises in quotation, but it's important to ask how they plan to achieve them. How could a union guarantee my benefits will improve? How could a union guarantee my pay will increase? How much will dues be? How many times has the ALU negotiated on behalf of others? So that's just one of the anti-union signs. Another one, a union and the reality of dues. A union is a business, and every business needs money. So that's a common propaganda tool, calling the union a business. Dues are typically mandatory in New York. Ask the ALU about dues, get the facts. Let's start with your impressions of the messaging they're putting out there, because the fact of the matter is, I've been to this warehouse a lot. These are a lot of younger workers. I mean, I see the workers that come off that bus. I don't have, statistics, but they look 18 to 25, 18 to 26. Sure, there's older workers sprinkled in, but it's a lot of younger workers. And when you're being bombarded all day with propaganda, it's a powerful thing, because they might not be well versed on unions or their rights or those kind of things.
So first, to the Amazon labor union in Staten Island, it's quite a coup for them to get the 30, 40%, 50% of signatures needed to get the NLRB to give a green light to hold an election. That's very hard to do, and they did that. And hats off to them for accomplishing that. And Amazon, of course, is being its old, aggressively anti-union self. You showed two posters, Jordan. One I thought was, asking the smart questions, and in ways fair questions, somewhat unfair too, about, what can the union do for you? The union can't guarantee you raises. And if a union says, we're going to get you raises of 10%, 20%, that's not true. And that, and they'll be accused of unfair labor practices by promising something that they can't give. So management smartly will often say, can they promise you wage increases? And the Amazon Labor Union, this is the first, it's a new union, less than a year old. This is the first place they're trying to organize. And it's a legitimate question when you say, have they ever negotiated a contract? And this is a big problem for any first-time union, when you try to negotiate and you don't get anywhere and you threaten to go on strike, you don't have a strike fund the way the Teamsters have a strike fund, the United Steelworkers have a strike fund, or the service employees have a strike fund. So that makes it harder. And as much as I admire Christian Smalls, the head of the Amazon Labor Union, who's so courageous and very smart, he does have that. I thought he'd link up with another union, because he will need some financial backing, I thought, now, and also if and when they win, just to pay for lawyers and stuff. Now, the second poster, and I tweeted about this earlier today, this is the typical traditional anti-union dishonest BS. And I write about this in my book. And Walmart also says, a union is a business. They just want their dues. And in my book, I quote, one of the nation's foremost labor experts, Tom Koken at MIT. And Tom says, basically, he's more polite. He says, that's just not true. Unions are entities, they're institutions, they're groups of workers that are formed not to make money like a business. They're formed to improve wages and benefits and safety and pensions and health. And, like the Girl Scouts, they need money to function. So Girl Scouts sell cookies, unions, charge dues, because you need professional negotiators. You need to pay for lawyers if someone's fired improperly. A union with 10,000 members probably needs a union president, and maybe that person has to be full-time, and you have to pay that person a salary. So you have dues. So, one of the crazy things that Amazon's suggesting is, well, unions should have dues, so they should be able to even have smart lawyers or smart negotiators or smart researchers that dig up dirt on the things that corporate executives are doing wrong, or the way corporations break the law on safety. And in saying that unions shouldn't pay dues, they're trying to turn workers unfairly against a union, and workers don't understand that, you might have to pay $400 to $500 worth of dues a year, but the union might result in $3,000 worth of raises a year, health benefits that are worth another $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a year than non-union benefits. And there are all these studies, gazillions of studies saying that union members get a better deal at work and pay and benefits and job security than non-union members. But Amazon, and I'm sure they're $1,000 an hour, anti-union lawyers are saying, Trump has this idea that unions are businesses and that you might be able to fool, trick, manipulate, these young workers into thinking that unions are just fighting to put money in their pockets. Having said that, George, there are unfortunately, these very dishonest entrepreneurs who try to form, there are a few of these, they're not very common, that try to form unions just to put money in their pocket. But I could assure you that someone like Christian Smalls is, a really impressive, idealistic, high-minded, honest union person. And he was fired fighting Amazon at the Staten Island warehouse for better protections for workers during the pandemic. And he has really dug in and is fighting very hard. And he's certainly not doing it as a business.
I wanted to touch on that because to me, for example, I've covered a lot of pipeline fights. I was at Standing Rock, freezing my ass off for 6 months. One of the best journalistic experiences of my life. There was a lot
not when Pinkertons have pipes and are hitting union members. No.
Right. Oil pipelines. Yeah. And, to me, most of these companies, they don't really feel a threat to break the law. Because none of these executives are going to jail. Okay, they'll pay the fine. The oil companies, they don't want to pay, whatever the massive fine is, but it's baked into the balance sheet. And I look at labor and this union busting, and I'd love your experience and reporting. To me, the National Labor Relations Board, it doesn't really have much teeth. That's not completely their fault, but Amazon is going to continue doing this union busting. Starbucks is going to continue doing this level of union busting because what actually is the grave penalty to them? Paying fines, a national settlement where they have to give workers, notice of their rights. I wanted to ask you from the National Labor Relations Board purview. It seems to me it's a board without much teeth, whether it's their fault or not, and the PRO Act could make a huge difference in actually preventing a lot of the things we're seeing that you and I are talking about.
So, Jordan, allow me a little history. So, the 1930s with the Great Depression, unemployment reached, 25%. Millions of Americans, were on bread lines, eating an apple a day, not much more. And Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal Congress wanted to do something to lift workers, to increase their wages, to increase their bargaining power vis-a-vis corporations. So in 1935, the National Labor Relations Act was passed. That created the National Labor Relations Board to help protect workers' rights. And that landmark law created a federally protected right for workers to form unions, that if a majority of workers at a private sector workplace vote to unionize, then the employer has to recognize and negotiate with the union. Now, but to get that passed and to get the support of the Southern senators who needed, FDR had to agree to, virtually no penalties when corporations break the law. So here we are 85 years later, and corporations see that under the National Labor Relations Act, they could break the law right and left, egregiously, shamelessly. And under the law, unlike virtually all other laws, there's no financial penalty. There are no fines for violating the law. So we just saw Starbucks fire 7 of the workers who are leading the unionization effort in Memphis. So if the NLRB finds that they were fired illegally because they supported the union, Starbucks can't be fined. The worst that can happen is it can be ordered to pay, the week's back pay, the month's back pay, when the workers were supposed to be working, but they were out of work. But if in the meantime, the workers found another job, perhaps the job even paid more than Starbucks, then you subtract those earnings from all the back pay owed, so Starbucks may well owe nothing. In my book, I give the example of a nursing home worker, a very courageous nursing home worker in West Palm Beach, Florida, who was leading a unionization campaign. And the company fired him and totally made up this pretext of firing him that he supposedly choked a nurse. 5 years of litigation. The regional NLRB, the national NLRB, the United States Court of Appeals. Finally, he was reinstated after 5 years. And by then, the unionization drive had died. And because he had found other jobs in those 5 years, the company basically only had to pay him like $1,000 in back pay. So, as I've written, I think it's almost malpractice for a management side labor lawyer not to tell their client, you should break the law. You're much better off to break the law. Take a nursing home. If you're trying to negotiate, unionize a nursing home, say with 200 workers, and you unionize it and win a 10 or 15% increase in pay and better health benefits and pensions, that might cost the nursing home $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year extra. But if you fire the 4 workers who are leading the unionization effort, maybe you'll be hit with $10,000 in back pay. And you might delay the unionization drive for 2 years or 3 years. So it's really smart to break the law. And the PRO Act, the Protecting Right to Organize Act, finally aims to put some financial teeth into the National Labor Relations Act. But once again, a filibuster by Republicans is going to prevent a pro-union legislation from being enacted.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.